The table was small, old, with edges softened by years of cloth and elbows, its surface slightly uneven beneath the worn linen runner that she changed with the seasons, pale blue in spring, muted yellow in summer, something darker as the days grew short. It sat in the corner of the kitchen near the window, where the morning light filtered in softly through thin curtains that barely moved even when the wind pressed against the glass, and every morning, no matter the weather, the calendar, or the weight of sleep still clinging to her hands, she set 2 plates. Always 2. Hers, on the right, by the chair with the looser armrest, and the other, placed across from it, equidistant from the folded napkin, the spoon laid with quiet precision, the cup filled not with tea but with space, with memory, with the breath of a presence that had never quite left. No one asked her why. No one questioned the second plate, though guests came rarely and never during breakfast, and the house remained still in the early hours, filled only with the soft sounds of her movement, the kettle, the slow creak of a chair pulled gently back, the occasional exhale when the window fogged or the toast browned too much on one side. She did not look at the second plate while she ate. But she placed it there carefully, as one places a letter in a mailbox already full, without expectation, but with a hope that resists explanation. There had once been someone. Perhaps more than once. But names and years had faded like water stains on the kitchen floor, visible only when the light hit at a certain angle, and even then, only to her. She never spoke of it. Not because she couldn't, but because the ritual said more than words would allow, and because something in her had long ago decided that presence did not require confirmation. It was not grief. Not anymore. It was devotion, silent, steady, and as ordinary as the way she folded the cloth napkin in half before placing it under the fork. Some mornings, she cooked something warm, letting the scent linger through the house longer than necessary. Other days, she took only bread and fruit, setting it on both plates with the same quiet care, as if the act of offering mattered more than its acceptance. She did not sit in silence, not entirely. She listened, to the sparrows near the fence, the distant murmur of a radio in a neighbor's kitchen, the way the wood beneath her chair sighed with familiarity. But beneath all of it, there was the sound of waiting. Not anxious, not restless, just a soft, enduring patience that lived in the corner of her eye every time she set that second place. Once, long ago, someone had joined her there, whether for a week or a winter, she no longer tracked it by time, only by the echo of that presence across the table. And even though the chair had long remained unoccupied, its outline held shape, carved not in wood but in habit, in the muscle memory of kindness repeated too often to forget. She never cleared the second plate before her own. That was the rule. Hers first. Then the other. As if to suggest that whatever had joined her, whatever still hovered at the edge of morning, deserved the final moment, the closing of the small ceremony that had become, over time, the quiet spine of her day. And so the table remained. Not set for company. Not left empty. But prepared, in the way some hearts are, without knowing, for a return that never needed to be spoken to be real. Winter came quietly that year, without storm or drama, just a slow encroachment of colder air that pressed against the windows each morning and left its breath behind in silver outlines on the glass. The kitchen grew dimmer in the early hours, and she began lighting a small candle at the edge of the table before sitting down, its flame flickering just enough to cast the softest warmth over the porcelain and linen. Still, she set the second plate. Even when her own appetite faded beneath the weight of too many empty mornings, even when her hands trembled slightly as she poured tea, even on days when her joints stiffened and the floor felt colder than before, the plate remained. Placed gently, always facing her, always across the narrow table that had come to hold more than just objects. Some days, she imagined she could almost see the outline of a hand resting beside the fork. Not vividly, not as a hallucination or a memory, but as an impression, like the way fabric remembers the shape of a body long after it's been folded and put away. There were times when she lingered at the table longer than usual, tracing the rim of her own cup with the tip of her finger, watching the candle shrink and pool, waiting not for a sound, not for a knock, but simply for the sense of presence to settle, as it sometimes did, in the quiet space between breaths. She never left the house for long. The world outside had grown louder in recent years, faster, more crowded, and filled with voices that didn't pause. She preferred the hush of her rooms, the rhythm of routines that asked nothing of her but the return to familiar motions, the folding and unfolding of time itself within the walls of a kitchen where a second plate was always present, always waiting, always untouched. But one afternoon, a gray, weightless kind of afternoon in late February, something changed. It began with a knock at the door. Not loud. Not insistent. Just enough to break the stillness that had come to feel sacred. She hesitated. It had been months, perhaps more, since anyone had come without calling first. Even deliveries were left at the gate. She stood in the hallway, hand resting on the edge of the table, eyes drifting toward the second plate, which still held the untouched bread, the folded napkin, the suggestion of a gesture never quite made. She opened the door. There was no one there. Just an envelope, small, unsealed, resting gently against the mat. No name, no return address. Inside, a single piece of paper, yellowed slightly at the edges, with handwriting that had once been familiar, though she hadn't seen it in years.